times is the will we can choose to. We may not understand it. It says forgive. It's a command. So if we can't, we say, okay, God, by acting my will, I choose to forgive and trust that you're going to help me forgive. This is your work to do, not mine. And so he'll do it in you if you allow him to do it. We always want to take back and say, I can do this. Or I'm only going to ask God if it's a difficult thing. I can do all this stuff. And a lot of things you can do on your own. But when you ever notice the really tough stuff, you have a lot of trouble doing it? I mean, the really tough stuff. I mean, like if you're going through trauma or major deaths or depressions and you live with people with mental health issues, things that your environment is so difficult, you need to, that's where I think that's the neat thing. There's only so many things we can do in life, and brush your teeth and do all the normal little everyday things, but the really hard stuff that can define who you are, that literally can mess up your way of thinking, you really need God's help with that, because it gets so distorted in the world. You have so many views, right? And the neat thing about God is he's got one view for you. Now what's neat is a view for you. Because it's just like when I was growing up, we'd have people saying, you shouldn't be smoking. God delivered me from smoking. God delivered me from drinking. You shouldn't be drinking. You shouldn't be smoking. Just a minute, you're not the Holy Spirit, right? Because and it doesn't mean that they get to drink and smoke. God will convict them. The Holy Spirit convicts them. I'm not their convictor. Do you see what I mean? And that's hard for people. And that's what we tend to do in this world. Say, well, if he got me out of it, what's your problem? Have y'all not ever seen that? And that's what I used to live under. What's going under? And that's when they use the Bible incorrectly. They beat you with the Bible. I've really known people quote the Bible to you when I was growing up. And you're thinking, that's so condemning. You feel like, how can you? And that's why I think that we get a bad rap as Christians, that people, incorrect people who are using the Bible for their own benefit, they're twisting it. Does that make sense? So it's the same thing. No matter what we're doing here, God has a good plan for us, and each one of us have a different plan. We're not to be all alike. Yes, we're to be like Jesus, but it doesn't mean robotize. It means because he's loving. He's love. That's what it is. It isn't like you're going to act exactly like him. Like that's why people have an idol and they dress like him and they act like him and they talk like him. Well, we're going to talk like Jesus. We should talk like Jesus. Maybe not King James or whatever, but the best us I can be. Whenever he talks to us in our language. Did y'all ever know? Because he says it the way we're going to understand it. And when you express it to somebody else, they might not go, what do you mean? Because you're not using their language. And the neat thing about it, Jesus uses our own language, right? He talks to you in the way you understand. And so when you get to somebody that you get around, as Christians, you find somebody that speaks the same kind of language, aren't you drawn to them? Because they understand what you're saying. And that's why Christians can find other Christians. They're drawn to each other, because I can walk into a room and I can tell somebody, that person's a Christian. And the more you walk in it, you can sense it, because you just know. And I say, are you a Christian? They go, yeah. And they go, how do you know? I said, you can tell. And you should be able to tell. We should be able to tell the way they talk, what they do, the way they carry themselves, their edification. Not that they're Pollyannas or anything. I was called that when I was a kid. Oh, you're just a Pollyanna. It's just that I spoke different than anybody I was around. And I was, but I didn't let it condemn me, and the neat thing is, if you are condemned like that, you're doing it just like, remember in the study today, you're condemned for Jesus in our Bible. It says, how glorious to say, if I have to die for you, what better person to die for? Because if I'm going to die for something else. And one thing that people ask me sometimes is, there's so much pain and God lets you go through pain. Well, you're going to have, I looked at it this way years and years ago when I was a kid. I said, well, you're going to have pain anyway. God would teach me, you're going to have pain anyway. Would you rather have it with a purpose or no purpose at all? Just no purpose at all. You're just going to hurt. There's no answer to it. There's no reason or rhyme. The neat thing about God and the church is, when you hurt, it's got a reason. It's got a purpose, and God can use that purpose if you allow it. Does that make sense? That's helped me a lot when I was a kid. Because God said, you're going to get through this. And then I'd realize he was in everything. Later on, you always, like we said, hindsight's better. You can see it. You live life looking backwards sometimes, not all the time. Don't live in the rearview mirror. I'm not saying that. But sometimes you understand life looking backwards. I did. I think it's pretty standard that as you go, now I get it. Now I see why I went through that. When I thought I was going through hell for him, I thought, am I wrong? And no, I was in exactly his perfect will, and I thought I was in hell. My job, everything. I thought, man, this is the worst, most difficult thing I've ever been in. Till I met Ed. No. But I was prepared. See, that's what Ed says. I was ready to meet Ed.
Thank you.
No, but he knew that. He was the one that told me, he says, well, God prepared you. And I, well, you got a point there. I had to go 20 years before I met him all through all this difficult stuff, because I was ready then. But that sounds, I make it funny, but it's true in life. If we realize these difficulties are for a purpose.
Sometimes you're down so you look up.